Hey, third grade, it is Mr. Frazier. Today is Thursday, April 30th, and this is a real short video for science since we didn't get to it yesterday. Your homework today is the comp check on page 221. We went over almost all that stuff, but I just wanted to clear up a couple things in case you were having trouble with the comp check. So we already talked about the different kind of habitats. So far, we've talked about saltwater and freshwater, and we started talking about land habitats. And the first one we discussed was the prairie, which is a large, flat, open area consisting mainly of grass. And so certain types of animals are going to live in that habitat. You have a lot of grazers like the bison and goats and prairie dogs because there's lots of grass. So you have large herds of one certain type of animal, grazers in this case. You do have predators like cougars or coyotes or wolves, but you're not going to have climbing animals, and you're not going to have as many flying animals because of the nature of the habitat. We do have certain animals that nest on the ground. Malachi and a couple of others of you guys had remembered that from your reading. But mainly the animals that live on the prairie are adapted to that life of walking across open territory, eating grass. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about the desert. Now, the desert is a unique habitat for many animals because the four things that every animal or organism needs in a habitat is space, shelter, food, and water. And in the desert, obviously, that is going to be the hardest one to find, water. But when we think of the desert, we think of zero water anywhere. There are water sources, and it even rains in the desert. It just does so very infrequently, or hardly ever is another way of saying that. So your book says a desert is a dry land area with very little plant growth. And that is true. But there are certain types of plants that grow in a desert. For example, a cactus. Now, cactus only grow in the Western Hemisphere, that is North and South America. So you won't find any cactus in Africa or Asia unless they've been brought back over there because they are unique to our deserts. And a cactus is designed by God to absorb all of the little moisture that it gets. So remember, we talked about dew at night when the air cools, the moisture in the air that's always around us condenses into little water droplets called dew, and it rests on solid surfaces. So at night, the cactus absorb all of that dew and it stores it inside. All of the animals, just like the cactus, have adapted to this dry environment. So you find a lot of reptiles in a desert. They don't need as much water. And a reptile is cold-blooded. And we talked about it a little bit, but I'll just remind you, warm-blooded means you regulate your own body temperature. You and I are warm-blooded. Your cat and dog are warm-blooded, meaning that if it's cold outside, we're still 98 degrees in our body. If it's hot outside, we're still 98 degrees in our body. And we can keep that temperature. If it gets cold, we put on a sweater to trap in the heat. If it's hot, our body sweats and releases the heat. Cold-blooded means that an animal, their inside temperature is the same, or not the same, is affected by the outside temperature. So if it's cold outside, their body temperature drops much more quickly. If it's hot outside, their body temperature overheats. So if you're a snake and it's the daytime, you have to slither under a rock or else you'll overheat and die. If it's cold, like in the morning, they slither out up onto a rock and absorb the rays of the sun. Because they're cold-blooded, they don't have to eat as much to keep up their energy. In order to keep up our 98 degrees, we got to eat all the time. But if you're a snake, you only have to eat once every couple weeks. So reptiles are perfect for a desert environment. There are even amphibians that live in a desert. Remember, amphibians are animals that live in the water and the land. And you may be thinking, Mr. Fraser, wait, we just talked about there's no water in the desert. How can there be amphibians? There's special kinds of amphibians called toads. And like I said, it does rain in the desert. So they can lie dormant like a seed or hibernating kind of, and wait for these seasonal periods of rain. And then they metamorphose or change during the times when it does rain and pools of water collect. So they can exist. It's just they have to be very specially designed by God to do so. There's also sometimes dangerous animals in a desert. Because it's a harsh environment, it's hard to live there, you gotta be tough. So scorpions live in deserts. Remember the arachnids, they have 8 legs and the sharp pincer on their tail, 2 clumping pincers. And snakes, like rattlesnakes, you gotta be careful for those. And finally, your book talks about the Gila monster. Now the Gila monster is a reptile, we talked about them, but it's a lizard, not a snake. Snakes have 2 fangs, usually, unless they're like constrictors. And if a snake is a venomous snake or has poison in it, it clamps down with those fangs, and the fangs, the teeth are hollow, so it injects that venom into its prey. And that's how it catches and eats things. A Gila monster is poisonous, but it doesn't have fangs or poison in its body. What it has is venomous bacteria in its mouth. Think like all these gross things on the teeth. And then when it bites into something, its teeth make a wound, right? Something bit you, you'd be bleeding, and the bacteria gets in the blood. And that's why they're dangerous. And there's only like 2 or 3 types of venomous lizards. And the Gila monster is one of them, and they live in the desert. In your book, it's page 218, you can see it there. But so there's all kinds of spiders and different creepy things in the desert. Page 221 is the comp check that you're going to have to do. It's true or false, so it should be fairly easy. Remember, you can do it in the book at this point. That ship has sailed, so you can just do it in the book, take a picture, send it to Mr. Fraser. All right. I hope you guys are doing well. I am loving seeing you guys at the on our Monday, Wednesday, and Fridays. Tomorrow we're going to meet, do our spelling test. Ms. Dolio was even talking about trying to do some chapel things in the future if we can make it work. I hope I didn't spoil anything. But so look forward to that. Anyways, have a great day, guys. I'll see you tomorrow.